Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today, I'm excited to welcome back Joy Onyschak to the podcast. Joy's first episode with me was our number one most downloaded episode of my first year podcasting. And so I'm really happy to have her back to expand on what we talked about in the first episode, which we basically went over how the nervous system works and how it gets dysregulated and how we can bring it back to center. So today we are going to be talking about movement, bringing movement back to the body, especially when you are in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. That can be related to chronic stress, to overwhelm, but it can also be related to chronic health issues. You know, when you have lupus or other chronic illness, you can get stuck in essentially a freeze state because your body doesn't want to function that day. You might be in a severe flare or in a high pain threshold on any given day. And so, how do we bring movement and breath into our self care practice when the body is telling you it doesn't really want to move and you're feeling, like you're in that physical freeze state, whether your mental health is in that freeze state or not? So, we're going to be talking about how to bring subtle movement back into your practice when you are in that mode. So, this is going to be a really cool episode because Joy is taking us actually through a guided movement practice, a guided somatic practice. And we also do a short breathwork practice at the end. I encourage you to listen to this when you have some time and space where you can actually put a mat down or lay on your bed or sit on a couch or a chair to spend some time doing this practice along with us. But if you are listening to this while you're driving or while you're out on a walk or something, just make sure to come back to it and listen up until that practice and then come back to it when you can actually spend some time doing it, and it will feel so good. I promise. I felt so amazing after these two practices that she talks us through. So I'm going to leave it there. Please do take a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast before we get started. It means so much to me. It helps this podcast grow and get heard by more listeners. People need to hear the information that we are putting out there. I have so many amazing guests that come on this show, and it's with the express purpose of giving you more information as the listener to empower yourself in your health journey and just in your overall growth journey as you move through life. So thank you for taking the time to subscribe, and please enjoy this episode with Joy Onyschak. Joy, welcome back to the Health Bridge podcast. I'm just really excited to do a part 2 with you because you were the number one most listened to episode of my first year podcasting. And so let's continue to expand on the conversation that we were having. So welcome back.
Thanks so much for inviting me back, Holly. And that's really fun to hear. And mostly congratulations on, your first year of celebrating your anniversary of your podcast. It's amazing. And I have no idea how much work a podcast is. I don't have one myself. And I can only imagine that we were talking a moment ago about behind the scenes with some of this stuff. So I can only imagine the amount of work it is to do these things. And so thank you for running them and promoting health and wellness and, giving people like me an opportunity to reach a broader audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a labor of love, but I absolutely love doing it. So it totally fills my cup. And if I can use this platform to help anyone else and encourage them on their journey, then, it's awesome. So last time when you were on, we were talking about somatic work and we did really you know, nervous system 101 essentially class on just how the nervous system works, how it functions, what happens when it kind of goes awry or gets dysregulated. And we want to expand on that today, but I want to go back and touch on something that you were speaking to in the last podcast, which was the acronym of SAS. And I'll let you explain what that is because that's going to be kind of our starting point for today's conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, SAS for me, it just is a really fun little way to remember 4 steps to shift your state. And by state, I mean we're out of sorts. We're either feeling like we can't slow down, we have a lot of big energy in our body, that sympathetic fight flight type energy of adrenaline and cortisol, and we feel like we can't slow down. We might be feeling really worried or anxious. We might be feeling really irritated or angry about things. And so, another state that we might find ourselves experiencing that's not fun is a shutdown state. And that's really where like the energy gets really maybe condensed or small, where we're kind of pulling ourselves in and we might feel like we're needing to shut the world down and hide. We might even feel frozen, like a freeze state where we just feel immobilized and not able to get going. And there can be like a feeling of dread here in this place. And so these are states that we all experience as humans. And really what we want to do is be able to shift these states for ourselves because we want to get back to feeling joy and presence and curiosity and compassion, spontaneous gratitude, all of these things that are also part of being human, that are biologically almost impossible to get to when we're experiencing these other states. And so the acronym SAS is just a fun little way to remember the steps. And the first S is sense. So starting to notice, what is it that we are feeling in our body? We might feel that things are fast. And the listeners here, we can all of us right now, listeners and us, we can take a moment just to check in, like what's the speed of things inside of you right now? And does your body feel light and almost maybe so light that ungrounded? Or does your body feel really like heavy, like hard to get moving? Are if you're sitting, are you sitting up on your sit bones or are you sitting back on your sit bones? Just even noticing like the posture that your body is in. If you're standing, are your shoulders rolled and thumped or slumped rather, or are your shoulders just in an easy place to greet the world? And even noticing like what's the gel, if your body is a container of gel, what's the gel feel like today? Where is it hard and cementy? Maybe there's places that are pretty fluid and goopy. Just take a moment and even just explore your own gel for a moment. The gel on one side of your neck might be different than the other. And even noticing the thoughts. So we're sensing the thoughts as well. I'm thinking this. I notice thoughts of worry. I notice thoughts of dread. And so the first step is sensing. It's actually just picking up on what's going on in this moment. That might include the breath, short, shallow, expanded, choppy, all of that sort of stuff. So the second letter is A. So A is acknowledge. And it's really, can we greet what is here? Say hello to it and allow it to be here. Really just giving that a moment. So whatever it is that you just found in your own, sensing a moment ago, especially if there was something challenging that you noticed, could you take a moment to say hello to it and just greet it? Like, I'm acknowledging that I feel things in my body feel just a little bit fast as I'm settling in. That little bit of nervousness that comes with being interviewed, having the spotlight on. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just saying hi to that. It's okay for it to be here. It's pretty normal. And so the next letter is an S, and it's soothe. And so how could we offer that part, that part that was a bit challenging, how could we offer that part a little bit of soothing and kindness? And for me, I just intuitively want to, bring my hand to my heart, and my body starts to rock. How could we soothe whatever it is that's going on? And for some, that might be just a soft touch or a soft brushing. We went over a lot of tips in that last podcast of things to do, but how could we take care of and really nurture and soothe that part that is in some challenge? Whether that's in our mind, something on our mind, something on our hearts, or maybe, something physically in our bodies, that just needs a little soothing. And then the last S is self-adjust. What do we need to do to shift the state? And that's going to be different for every situation. So that's that. And it's kind of fun. I have a gym t-shirt that I ordered online from somewhere when I was ordering gym t-shirts, and you get these ads, and one of the ones I have is like, it's this racerback, gym t-shirt, and it says the sass is strong with this one. So I just think it's so funny that, it's my personality. For people who know me, I'm definitely a little sassy and rebellious and all of that stuff. And I even got the t-shirt, so it's kind of fun.
I love it.
It means so much more to me now. I bought it like 5-6 years ago, and it means so much more to me now.
I love that. So this is a really, really useful acronym, because I think really what it's doing is it's teaching us to have and cultivate self-awareness. We can get so caught up in what's going on externally that we get so distracted from what's actually, how that's translating internally. So, when I am busy, for example, I've got a whole task list for the day, and I'm just like barreling through one by one by one, I'm kind of ignoring the sass. I'm ignoring how that's affecting my body physically or emotionally or mentally. Like, how am I processing all these things? I can just get so busy that I shut that down and I ignore it, and I end up at the end of the day feeling very dysregulated because I wasn't giving myself little check-ins. And I'm much better at that now, but I still get caught up in it. I think that's just human nature, right? So this is such a great way to, again, create that self-awareness. It doesn't need to take a long time, right? This can take 5 minutes. Just like, stop what you're doing, feel into your body, feel into your, physical state, your mental state. how are we doing? We're like taking stock. How are we doing? And we can find something that might need adjusting. Sometimes just that stopping and thinking and feeling will calm everything down, but other times it'll inform us, you know what, we need to readjust this here,
Yeah.
you know? And so how I want to translate this into our conversation today is you and I have been talking about when you're in the autoimmune world and you have flare days that are they just completely overtake you, maybe you can't get out of bed. Maybe your fatigue is so bad that you can't get out of bed, or your physical pain is so bad that you're rendered almost useless, right? Sometimes this is just for an hour or two during the day. Sometimes it's a full day. Sometimes it's days on end. And movement and breath are so important for our physical health and our mental health. But when you're in this flared up state or this triggered state, it can be really overwhelming and hard to figure out how to still incorporate that in to your routine and to your self-care routine, because it's so overwhelming, because you are so fatigued, or just so feeling like you're rendered so useless, and all you can do is like curl up in a ball on the couch or in bed. But we still want to find ways where we can address the nervous system here and address some of the healing that we can get from just subtle movements. And so, if you could speak to that, both from the fatigued state or the pain state, like how can we still incorporate some movement into our self-care routine in a subtle ways that aren't going to overwhelm the state that we're already in? And then how can we also follow that through to like the mental and emotional state with addressing this with SAS, and then taking this into a subtle movement practice?
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say first off that I don't have personal experience with an autoimmune disorder. What I know really well is depression and the shutdown state of depression, and the freeze states, also the freeze states that come from trauma recovery. And so just as an example, my own example this morning, I woke up this morning in a state of, I would call, freeze, where I felt, and I haven't had this experience. I used to wake up like this all the time, like for a long time, and I haven't had this experience in quite a while. So it was sort of a gift from an old friend this morning, where I woke up feeling, I felt really immobilized. I could feel like this feeling of not, like, I'm not gonna be able to get out of bed. I feel kind of stuck here this morning. And I had this sense of dread about my day. And so for me, what I did is I just noticed it. I noticed the sensations of it. And I acknowledged it. I took some time to just go. I was kind of surprised. But I was like, hey, I think we're in freeze this morning. How about that? Feeling, noticing the dread. And I literally had to be like, well, what's going on today? Okay, we got this interview today and client later, and it's like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Isn't that interesting? And I had to remind myself, well, first of all, I acknowledged and I soothed, so I offered myself some kindness and comfort. And then I reminded myself, oh, you have an interview today with Holly, and you know Holly, and Holly is safe to work with, right? And Holly's community is safe and friendly to work with. Like I just reminded myself that, because I thought, is that what's going on? I'm not sure, but that today's gonna be a good day. I had to remind my body that. And then I was able to get up and shift and get moving slowly. so I think that the big thing is that we can be, and when I rehearse, when I go backwards, after I got up and got me, I'm like, what happened? Like, I debrief with myself, like, I wonder why that happened today. And I look back at yesterday and the last couple days, and I've been getting back into working out more regularly. So I've been doing some lifting of weights, and I worked out yesterday, and I went to a yoga class, which I thought was going to be more relaxing, and it was more work. Like, it was one of those like fitness yoga classes that I was like, ooh, and loud music. And I'm like, that's not what I wanted at all. But you just stay and do the class. And so I ended up it's like I pushed my body too much yesterday. And this morning I woke up, with a list of things to do, probably on my mind in some way, in my subconscious. And I was like, oh no, this is too much. Yeah. And so I think the big thing is that, giving ourselves permission to, well, first off, to just really acknowledge, and, the word admit comes up for me sometimes, like admit that I've pushed it. I've done a little too much. I'm impatient. So I want to be doing everything that I, was doing when I was 40 or 30. And I have to sort of admit to myself that I am in this process of recovery still in my own nervous system. It takes a while, and it's a slow cooker process, not a fast fry, you know. And so having to really give myself permission to back off and do less and pace myself. So this is a huge thing when we are in some kind of recovery with something that's going on with our nervous system, is really tuning in. Like, honestly, I probably should have just got out and walked out of that yoga class last night, because it was so not what my body wanted at all. But I just kind of I'm here, push through, it's rude to leave, like all that kind of stuff that we do. And, I gave myself permission to do less in the class and listen to my body in the class. But it really is this really learning to listen to ourselves and our needs, and giving ourselves permission to do less when we need to do less, especially in a type of a flare-up day or a day when we're coming out of freeze. We really need to be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves more space. And so what I did this morning was I messaged you and said, hey, I'm having a time thing this morning. Can we do this a half an hour later? And you're like, yeah, that works for me too. And it was like, so I recognized that I needed a little more space, and I asked for it. And you were happy to oblige that. And so sometimes it's just acknowledging what's going on, taking care of, offering kindness, not berating, and then being able to shift our state, moving gently, going gently, which we're going to practice. And then also recognizing what it is that we really need on a day like today, and asking for it.
And that's so important. Finding your voice to ask for it, and to set some boundaries when you need to, and to not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
I can so relate to everything you said about, overdoing it sometimes and pushing yourself too hard. My history with chronic fatigue is I used to work out a lot when I was younger, and we're talking 20 plus years ago at this point, pre-mono, pre me getting sick. I loved to work out. I was at the gym multiple times a week. And since getting sick, I've always had such a hard time getting back into an exercise routine of any sort. And I kept trying to go back and do the same type of, more intense workout that I used to do. And every time, I could make it about 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, and then I would crash. It would trigger the fatigue and I would crash. And then it would take me 3 weeks to kind of recover and recoup. And it just created this fear cycle of, every time I push myself, I'm going to re-trigger that fatigue. And that was my cycle for so long. And it still can crop up sometimes, just to a much lesser extent than it used to. But I finally had to reframe what exercise had to look like. So I ended up starting, and what finally got into my exercise routine that I do now daily is I started with a 10-minute a day yoga challenge. It was like a 30-day challenge that I found on YouTube. Yoga with Cassandra. A lot of people know her. She's fantastic. I recommend her to everybody on YouTube. But it was just 10 minutes a day. And I was like, okay, I think I can do that. And I got through almost the full 30 days. I was like, okay, this feels pretty good. And it still took me, beyond that 30 days, it still took me that whole year to really implement that and feel good doing that almost daily. Or I should say, it took me about a year to get to where I was doing it daily. And now I'm up to a point, that was a couple of years ago. And now I'm up to a point where I do generally anywhere from 20 to an hour a day and sometimes it's just very mild stretching because that's all I can manage. And that's usually like a 10 to 15 minute. And when I have more physical energy, I would do more. I do something that's a little more vinyasa flows, but I'll give myself that space to decide in that day what I can handle.
Yeah, I love that. I give myself the space to, in that day, to decide what I can handle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly what an interoceptive or a felt sense practice is really about, which we're going to do right away. It's learning and practicing feeling and getting in touch with the sensations in our body, because that is a practice for when we're out there in the middle of our day, whether we're out and about in a class somewhere else, or doing life, doing dishes, whatever it is, where we can just literally be aware of what it is we're feeling when things start to get loud, that we're hearing those voices from our bodies and those requests from our bodies for rest, for change of position, whatever it is, for more space. So that when we are practiced that way, we are going to hear ourselves. We are attuned to what's going on with us in the moment, so that we can make good choices for ourselves right there in that very moment. So that's exactly what this is about.
Yeah, it's developing that conversation with yourself. It's learning another language, I guess, of just tuning in and being aware. And it's really developing that personal relationship. And the more you get to know yourself and listen to yourself and give yourself permission to listen to what your body's telling you, the easier it becomes to kind of learn to take care of yourself in the right ways.
Yeah, and the sense of like inner trust, I think, that we develop with ourselves as well is huge. That sense of trust that we are, it's the same as a parent-child relationship, our bodies and us. It's like our body can trust that we're going to look after it and we're going to listen and take care of it. And it is huge. And then our bodies feel safe because they know that someone's listening, paying attention and taking care of. And then our bodies are going to be there's less need for our bodies to shout about things. Yeah.
Excellent.
So that's my theory on a real pragmatic level.
I love it. So now you're going to take us through a movement practice, right?
Yeah. So we're going to be, the invitation is to start on the floor. And I also invite you to find like a blanket that we can fold, or a soft cushion, or a small cushion or something that has a little give back. So a firmish cushion or a folded blanket. We're going to be using it for a breath practice at the end of our practice today. And so that's something you might want to have handy as well. Just wanted to let people know that if getting down on the floor isn't for you today, by all means, you could do this practice lying in bed on the couch, or you could do it seated in a chair. I'll try to give some cues that are universal enough that it works wherever you are.
Perfect. And now I'm going to turn off my video so I can play along here as well.
All right. So let's come on down to the floor and find a spot on your floor that's comfortable enough. And just give yourself a moment to really arrive on the floor. And actually, even to find what's comfortable on the floor for you or comfortable enough. Is it knees bent? Is it legs straight? Or one of both? One of each, rather. Just finding comfort for yourself. And just giving yourself a moment to really arrive for yourself in the practice of sensing, going inward, noticing what's there, greeting it, soothing it, and then adjusting. So let's bring your knees now, one at a time, so that you're hugging both knees in towards your chest. And just find a little rock on your low back. Just offering your low back a little bit of comfort and soothing. And just finding that right part of the back of your pelvis to rock on that feels really yummy. Is it hugging knees and more? So you're more on your low back? That feels good. Is it releasing your knees away from you? Maybe arms are straighter. There'll be more arch in your low back here. More rocking down on the base of your sacrum, almost your tailbone. Or somewhere in the middle. Where is it that just feels the most yummy? And if it feels nice to even bring some circles into your body, you also can do that. And then just release your feet down to the floor, either knees bent or legs straight, whatever feels good. And just take a moment to wiggle around, settle in once again. And can you take a moment just simply to just pause and check in with yourself? How am I in this moment? And is there any place in your body that is, feeling a bit challenged? Maybe there's pain or stiffness. Could you take a moment just to acknowledge that place inside of you? Say hello, greet it. It's allowed to be here. And then how could you offer that part of you a little bit of soothing and comfort? And that might be light touch, gentle stroking. It might actually be some movement or an all-out shape change. How could you just simply soothe and take care of whatever it is that's speaking a little bit loud and needing some support? And as we practice today, just know that everything I cue here is an invitation. Feel free to modify and do your own thing. That's really what this practice is about, is listening to your body more than me. So I'll give some instructions and some guidance here, but feel free to make it your own. Let's start with hugging your right knee in towards your chest. Your bottom leg can be bent or straight. It's up to you and your low back. And just inviting a little bit of movement by hugging the knee in and releasing away. And maybe even some small circles with this hip joint. Just exploring your own range of motion through your hip. And then continuing to hug your knee in, start to rotate and circle your ankle, your right foot. And from here, sliding your hands just to the back of your knee and just starting to straighten your leg or move it towards straight. We're really just opening and closing the knee joint. We're not forcing or pushing towards straight. We're coaxing and nudging and exploring, lubricating that knee joint. And then let's lower that down and take a moment in between sides just to pause and check in. And when you feel ready, let's draw the other knee in. You might feel your breath rising in your belly towards your leg and releasing away. Maybe some circles with that knee. Exploring your range of motion in this hip joint. Hugging knee in a little more, breathing into your belly and circling your ankle. Noticing how your foot and ankle feel on this side. Might be quite different than the other one. Finding your own kind of movements and nuances through your ankle and toes and feet. Kind of liberate your feet a bit. And then put your hands to the back of your thigh and just start opening and closing that knee joint. And as the knee lowers, you might point your toe. And as you open, you might stretch your heel a little more towards the ceiling. Just see what's possible without strain. And then letting that go, releasing that, and just taking a moment to really move in your own way. I'm just finding a big yawn and stretch, almost like a giant star on the floor. Feels good to expand. Just allow yourself to do whatever feels good in your body for a moment. Maybe a little wiggle. And then next we're going to do one of my favorite movements to help calm and settle myself down. This is a nice one sometimes before bed. If you've got a racing mind, this helps me quite a bit. We're going to do some skin gliding, or one of my teachers, he calls it rhythmic rocking, which I really love that name. So bending the knees, feet on the floor, letting your pelvis be just nice and quiet. You're just going to gently press your feet into the floor. So it creates a movement like a rocking headward to footward. So see if you can use just the pressing of your feet and the pulling of your feet towards your hips, back and forth, pressing and pulling to create a rocking headward to footward. Now, if this is confusing in your body, just go ahead and acknowledge that. That's just fine. It could take a little practice. Just pushing and pulling with your feet to create this rocking motion. You can go slow or fast. You'll feel your low back rounding and arching as a result of this movement, this rocking. You can try this rocking with one leg extended, one foot on the ground, or one knee bent. Keep this rocking going. Switch legs. And you can straighten both legs, almost kind of digging your heels into your mat or your carpet, and just pointing and flexing your feet as a way of creating this rock through your whole body. And then bending knees and continuing to rock. And just with another option, you can give it up if your body's had enough of it and hug knees into chest, or lift your hips into a tiny bridge and keep rocking. Headward to footward rocking. You should feel the skin on your back and all the fascia in your back getting a nice massage. Almost you could feel the skin catching on the carpet or the mat. I like to, once I'm up here a little bit with my hips up in a little bridge, I like to also wiggle from side to side on my mid and upper back, almost like a pony rubbing his back in the dirt. Yeah. And you might lower your low back down and round your low back into the floor and really wag your tail vigorously, rubbing your low back into the floor, sort of releasing your low back fascia a little. And whenever your body's had enough of this, just letting it go, coming into rest or coming into any shape or movement that just feels good for your body. I'm hugging knees back into chest and rocking again. And then taking a moment just to pause once again, settling into a shape that's comfortable. And just checking in, tuning in. How am I? How's my body? What do I feel? I'm feeling some tingling and aliveness in my body. What are you noticing about yours? Some big breaths coming in. So if you're wanting to continue on with me, follow along with me, or find your own movements that feel good in your body, I'm going to let my knees, so knees are bent, feet on the floor. Just letting my knees start to drop together over to one side and the other. So just finding some windshield wipers. Knees going over to one side, coming back up to center, knees going over to the other side. And I want you to explore and experiment with how wide apart to take your feet. When your feet are close together, how does this feel in your body? And just noticing some of the pulls and stretches that you feel with the feet closer together. And maybe widening the feet a little bit or a lot. And just noticing how that feels different. And choosing the one that just feels the best for you, that just feels most yummy today. And if it feels good, you can also send the floor away a little bit through your back foot. So as the knees are dropping over, press down through your back foot. Let your breath come in. Releasing with a sigh back to middle. And do this a few times. Knees start to drop over, send the floor away through your back foot. Breath comes in, hold, like filling up a big balloon through your whole front body. Releasing back to center. And let's do this one more time on each side on your own. Just practicing and exploring, expanding. Using the ground as your partner. And then letting that go. And just, again, finding any movements that just feel great in your body right now. Taking about 30 seconds on your own to move in a way that simply feels good in this moment. Let yourself yawn and stretch. Let yourself sigh or make noises. Taking care of, exploring and finding what feels good in your body today. Feels good to do this. And then we're going to be making our way to our sides. So I invite you just to extend one leg long and bend one knee. And just start to roll a little bit to your side. You might press into that back foot and rock a little, almost like exploring how would I get to my side body. Really press into that back foot and roll to your side. Opening eyes. And looking around in your space. Seeing things maybe with new eyes. Just taking in. We're just going to make our way slowly up to a mid-level position. So for me, that feels like kneeling. My body's comfortable kneeling. And just either coming to sitting, some mid-level position for yourself. And taking a moment to arrive here, taking in things with your eyes. And just allow your body just to rock and sway. Really noticing contact points, of your shins or your sit bones on the floor as you sway and rock. If it feels good to offer yourself a nice kind hug as you rock, feel free to do that. Eyes can be open or closed. And how could you offer yourself a little bit of appreciation for this practice of listening to yourself, taking care of yourself? Offering yourself that kindness and that appreciation. And just know that can come back to this practice at any time in our day. It doesn't have to be 15 or 20 minutes. It can just be 1 or 2 minutes where we just simply pause and notice what's going on. We check in. We greet it. We say hello. We offer it some soothing and kindness, reassurance. And then we gently take care of. We shift our state. We self-adjust. So I hope this practice serves you well and that you take it with you and use it time and time again.
Okay, I would love to know how everybody's feeling. I'm feeling super relaxed right now, and I needed that after traveling for the last several days, visiting family over the holidays. It's been Thanksgiving here in the US, and it was fun, but it was definitely taxing. And so coming back home last night and then this morning recording with you and doing that practice, I actually really do feel like I've been reset a bit in my nervous system.
Yeah, that's good. So tell me, what did you most enjoy? What did your body most enjoy about that practice, Holly?
I think laying on my back, like doing a primarily lying down practice, helps my brain chatter calm down quite a bit. And then doing the sort of myofascial release with the rocking, I really enjoy that. I think it gets my, like the hydration flowing in my body. And I have a few different back issues. So being on my back like that really actually helps calm my, straighten out my back really. And so I enjoyed that, just the being on the back, calming the mind chatter, and then that myofascial release, and just those subtle kind of hip stretches. There's all these things that we did in your practice. They're very subtle, but like to the point where if your idea of exercise and movement is something like, weightlifting or, bodybuilding of some sort, or going on a run, like it seems so subtle that it might not make a difference. But I would argue that movements like that potentially make even more of a difference than, muscle strengthening or something intense.
Yeah, and as someone who has a history as a martial artist and an over exerciser and all of these things, yeah, I totally appreciate that. And I think the thing that we need to remember is that when we are in these states of we'll shut down states, for example, where we are feeling immobilized, like we're in states of freeze, especially when we're in states of freeze where we feel like we literally can't move, like we can't get off the couch, we can't get out of bed, that there's no way physiologically that we can expect our body to go from that state of shutdown, of non-movement, to going to boot camp, with the loud music and the fast, and like there's just no way we can make that transit. There's no transition. And so this is the transition to getting moving again. And if we push ourselves to do things that our body is not ready to, there will be consequences for it. And so this is a way of really honoring where we're at. It can be really humbling, especially when you do this for a living and help others with it, to greet yourself, to be able to have to greet these states sometimes, and to have to slow down, like really consciously slow down and do less. And so it's when we are stuck, to be able to bring in the little movements through the webs of our fingers and our toes, and the webbing of our neck, and just starting to mobilize gently. We're gently bringing in energy and movement to our system, so that now I actually feel like, oh, I can do more now. I mean, I can get up and move, and I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to take on the day. But if I had expected myself to just spring out of bed this morning when I wasn't feeling really shut down, that's asking too much. That's pushing through freeze. That's called functional freeze. And we can only do that for so long. And so it's like, think of it as transition. That's the transition to being able to get back to what it is that we want to be doing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a few points to make is, this type of practice is applicable for multiple reasons or multiple situations. So one being what we were talking about earlier, when you are in your physical health, feeling shut down, feeling triggered, feeling flared, feeling in pain. This is a good practice to carry you through that and still bring movement to the body when you can't get up and go for a walk or get up and exercise, right? This is perfect for that. But also when you are in that depressed state, when you are overwhelmed, when you are just triggered emotionally, and your head chatter is too much, this is perfect for that. And we're moving into the holidays. Christmas is a month away at the time that this is going to be released. And we all know that heightened family stuff and all the hustle and bustle of this time of year can be overwhelming on its own for someone that doesn't normally struggle with health issues or emotional issues. It can still be overwhelming. So this is a perfect time of year, actually, I think, for us to be introducing this practice to our listeners and give them tools just to get through the holidays on top of everything else that they might be dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. And there's a researcher named Dr. Robert Schleip, who's like the fascia guy and one of the fascia guys in the fascia community, and he did research on actually how stress changes the composition of our fascia, of our tissue. And we have tons of like layers and layers. I mean, it's everywhere in our body in different forms and different densities. And one of the big places of thick fascia is the lumbar area. And it's like, well, look at when people get stressed and overwhelmed, their low backs start aching. And now there's like scientific proof of like that happens. And we all know it because we all live it. But stress absolutely affects our fascia. The health of our vagus nerve, one of the things that the vagus nerve does is it decreases inflammation in our body. So that's why nervous system wellness is so important. And we can, these movements that we're doing, we're soothing. And as we're soothing and comforting our bodies, those messages of soothing and comfort are going from our bodies up to our brains. And our brains are registering that things are safe in this world for us, in this body. They're also, when we're doing some of these movements, we're adding hydration into the tissue as well. And that's going to bring in that suppleness that, that we're wanting back again. So within these very simple practices, there's a lot going on. And, we just come out of a session going, I just feel better. I don't know why, I just feel better. Yeah, there's just a tremendous amount going on. So it's super fun.
Wonderful. When you were talking about height, sorry, your type.
Oh, I was saying we forgot the breath practice. I forgot the breath practice. I wanted to end with that.
Yes, let's end with that. One last thing to mention, because you were talking about hydrating again, the body and the muscles and the fascia. Oh gosh, what was my point with that? I can't remember what I was going to say. But oh, just as we're getting older, as we're getting older, getting that hydration going through the body is that much more important. And,
Yeah.
if we want to keep that youthful look in our skin, this is yet another tool we have in our toolbox to affect us on that level too.
Yeah, and I'm 3 years into menopause, like 3 years postmenopausal, and I can tell you with all 100% assurance that our progesterone, when we don't have it anymore, the progesterone is our yin. It's what helps give us our lubrication in our body. And when we don't have that anymore, man, can you ever feel the stiffness in your body in a whole different way? And so this is an amazing type of, work and practice for bringing some of that lubrication back into the body as well. So, yeah, not everything, we're complex systems, but it's part of the puzzle. It's part of it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I wanted to share a breathwork practice with people as we wrap up. And also, just to let people know that I used to teach a lot of classes and I've taken a break from it. And I do plan to start offering an online somatic movement class with myofascial release using rubber balls and some somatic movement. So it's a really great combination. So if any of the listeners out there are looking for a weekly gentle movement class that focuses on felt sense and taking care of our fascia in this kind of way, then you can reach out and find me and stay tuned for the details.
I think that's going to be an amazing offering. I highly recommend doing that to all of our listeners. So we'll have Joy's information in the show notes so that you can reach out to her, find out more information.
Great. And then should we just go into a little breath practice as a wrap up here?
Yeah, let's do it.
I promise. So I want to make sure we do that. So what people are going to want to do is get that blanket or that cushion that I mentioned earlier. And you might have to, I've got a blanket and I'm folding it quite small so that it's almost like a nice little firm cushion under my belly. And we're just going to lie down on the floor with that cushion or blanket underneath your belly. And feel free to adjust and wiggle around and find that sort of right place to be. Think sort of belly button and around that area. And then I invite you, after you wiggle around and get comfortable, just to lower your head down onto folded arms. I'm going to keep my head upright just so my sound still comes through okay. But lowering your head down, resting on arms. Or maybe it feels good to stretch your arms out and just turn your head to the side. Just figure out what works in your body. And bringing your awareness to your breathing, feeling the breath coming in and out of your nose if you're not stuffed up today. And beginning to notice if the breath feels warm or cool coming out of your nose. And then checking in on your body and notice if there's any place in your body that you're kind of holding yourself up. Seeing if it's possible to release down just a little bit more into the floor. And bringing awareness back to breath, feeling that breath coming in and out of your nose. And also feel the breath expanding your belly into that blanket or cushion. And feeling the exhale, there's that releasing down into the cushion. Continuing to breathe nice and slowly, feeling that swell of belly into blanket, and that releasing away. So a lot of the nerve endings from the vagus nerve innervate our gut. And so that's why this can be a really helpful practice for people that are struggling in more of these shutdown states, feeling like it's hard to get going. This kind of practice can also be really great when we're just in overwhelm. You can almost imagine yourself as a young babe in a crib, maybe arms stretched out, sleeping, belly down, resting, no cares or worries. So I want you to now begin to notice the little gap or opportunity for pause at the top of the inhale and right after the exhale. So just noticing before the exhale begins, before the inhale begins, there's a little opportunity for pause. And particularly if you're experiencing overwhelm, a great practice would be to extend those pauses just a little bit. Oh, you might just have a 2 or 3 second pause at the top after the inhale, and the same after the exhale. So just consciously injecting little pauses. And if that's feeling really easy for you, you're welcome to extend those pauses longer. Just observing for your body's impulse to breathe in or breathe out. Not straining or forcing. Inviting the pause. Continuing to practice. Taking these little moments for yourself. And in these pauses, you might say to yourself things like, it's safe to do less. I am enough. This is enough. And then just letting your breath just do what it wants to do. Even let your body maybe start to gently move and wiggle a little as we really gently transition from this inward practice back into our world. Take your time. Great opportunity to begin to move and shift and stretch. My body just found its way back into a little child pose with some rocking. Coming up to mid-level, opening eyes. And again, starting to re-engage with the outer world through our senses, what we see, what we smell, what we hear. And thank you once again for joining Holly and I for this adventure, this conversation and these practices. It's been great.
Thank you, Joy. That was lovely. I've never done a breathwork practice actually on my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
That was new. I like that.
My breathwork coach and mentor and teacher, Lisa Cush, she calls that the stop, drop, and roll of breathwork.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like the first aid sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've taken to lately in the last, I don't know, several months. I either sleep on my back or my side, and I've come to really enjoy just completely like face planting, especially if I'm taking a nap. I just straight face plant, my arms down at my side, my head turned to the side, and it completely shuts my brain down. Like because I tend to have a lot of brain chatter, and it really calms me down. So I found that really relaxing doing the breath work on my stomach versus sometimes when I am trying to do a breath work practice and I'm sitting or I'm lying down on my back. My brain is still really active, and then I yawn a lot, and so I'm like tears streaming down my cheeks just from yawning, and it like takes me a lot longer to get into the breathwork practice versus that was really mellow and a very easy way for me to relax into it.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Fabulous.
Well, yeah, Joy, I think we'll wrap up here. Again, everyone check out or reach out to Joy and check out her upcoming breathwork or somatic movement practices or classes that she's going to be having starting hopefully in January. And reach out to us with any questions you have about anything you heard on this podcast, or any vagus nerve questions or nervous system regulation questions. We are here to help. So thank you so much for listening in, and thank you, Joy, again for sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks, Holly. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
I truly feel so relaxed after doing those two practices. And I'm so grateful for Joy to being open to sharing this practice with us on this platform. What I love about these practices with Joy is that it really does bring you back to that self-awareness. It brings you back to listening to your body, listening to the signs and signals that it's sending you. And like she said, and I want to bring it back to this, is that if we tune in more regularly to our bodies, then our bodies don't have to shout at us. They don't have to give us those drastic, dramatic signs through fight, flight, or freeze, through overwhelm, through anxiety, through pain, through illness. When we tune in and really listen to what our bodies are telling us, what we can handle, what we can't handle, what is pushing ourselves too hard, what is not pushing ourselves enough. Listening to ourselves is such an important skill, but it's an acquired one. And it's a lifelong learning experience, I think. What signs our body was giving us 10, 20 years ago is going to be a lot different than what signs it gives us now compared to, 10, 20 years in the future. So being aware that this is a growth process, this is part of your life journey to learn to tune into yourself and learn to create boundaries when needed, learn to push yourself when needed, learn to sit back and relax when needed, serves us so well in the long run and just creates that healthy relationship with our nervous system. And as she was saying, trains your nervous system to trust in your ability to care for yourself so it doesn't need to speak so loudly. So I hope that you really benefited from these practices that Joy led us through. Save this one and refer back to it. Share this episode with friends and family, anyone that you think would benefit from it as well. And I thank you for doing so. And I thank you for giving yourself the time and space to listen to this episode and to do these practices and to incorporate it into your weekly routine. Learning to love the process of self-care and of loving yourself in the way that your body needs at any given time is so important. So thank you so much for listening in, and I look forward to seeing you next week on our next episode.